Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is my riding impression review of the Duke 390. Now this is a 2024 model, which shouldn't matter to most people if you're looking at a new model because it's basically the same as the 2025 model. And in these riding reviews, what I try to do is step away from some of the sort of showroom type reviews that I've done in the past and give you specific things to riding reviews. So I've done a showroom review of this in the past where you can look at some of the technology on it, but we're going to talk about how that works when you actually ride the bike. And first thing I want to do is thank McLean Sports for giving me access, because most of my riding reviews, the vehicles that I've been riding have been provided by them. They're absolutely awesome, and of course I'm hoping to ride more and more and more, so the more you guys can help this channel out and help it grow, the better that is. So give the video a like, leave a positive comment, and the best thing you can do for the channel is just watch a few videos to the end. Pick a couple you like, watch them to the end. That really helps me. The more this channel grows, the more information I can get on video for you guys. All right, let's get going with this review. So if you've been following along with my channel chronologically and you're watching these as they come out, you'll know I've done a lot of smaller bike reviews, and this is one that I've really wanted to get out there in the first place. So yesterday I did a scooter. That's a great touring type small bike, especially if you're looking at a small displacement bike. There is nothing better than a scooter when you're looking for that comfortable seat, good wind protection, all that kind of stuff. And then of course I've done my own personal adventure bike, which kind of competes with the adventure bike of this one. I have a Royal Enfield Himalayan 450, which would compete with the adventure version of this bike here. But the Duke 390 is kind of the essence of this 390 series because everything seems to be built around that. And this bike is really unique in that it is very small. Now when I say small, what I mean is compact. It's not like Honda Grom small where it's too small, but it's very purpose built. There's nothing extra on it as far as a weight or styling type component, but it is different than the 390, sort of the race bike, the RC 390, and it's definitely different than their adventure bike, which is a whole different animal, and that's new for 2025. We're going to try to have that on the channel very soon. This one does offer some technology. You have the sense that KTM is a premium brand, but things like the Ninja 500 have increased their technology. So we're going to talk about how this bike is different from a lot of bikes that are in that small bike class. And I'm going to be honest, I had an absolute blast riding this thing. So let's talk about what it's like to ride this. And we're going to start at the front wheel and talk about the components and how they contribute to a unique ride on this bike. So taking a look at the front wheel here, when we talk about this in terms of riding, we have to remember that this is a 17-inch wheel, but it is a little bit smaller. It's about a 110 width instead of a 120 width compared to other super sport bikes. So what that's going to do is keep the bike very nimble, very able to move side to side very quickly, and that is a good thing as far as handling goes. The other thing is the brakes here. A lot of bikes do sort of a floating caliper here. This is a huge single brake. I will say these are bi-brake calipers, which is by Brembo. That's sort of the Indian name for them. They're made, this bike is made in India. But I will say that I have bi-brake calipers on my Royal Enfield adventure bike. These ones are definitely a stronger brake. So this is a very strong brake. A very lightweight bike is going to help with that as well. So the brakes are strong on this bike. The handling is very good. The real thing is, and we pointed this out in the walk around review, the Michelin Power 6 tires, they really are a tire well above this class. It's more tire than this bike needs at all. But what it does do is it really does help with the handling and give you a lot of confidence. So really nice combination here. The other thing you're going to notice is this little rubber marker here. This is what you see on traditionally on mountain bikes or something like that when you have adjustable suspension. You've still got it here, and that's because these front upside down forks are also adjustable. Again, a really unique feature, and it goes towards what this bike is, which we'll talk about at the end of this video, because all these components come together to make a bike that is very unique in the class because it really teaches you well, and how it teaches you is, like I said, something I'll put together a little bit closer to the end of this video. This being a 2024 bike, I will say that the engine in this, the upgrade from the 373 to the 399, again, similar character here. I found the bike to be fairly smooth. I don't know if it feels a little smoother to me than the 373 used to. I will say though that for a single cylinder bike, it really is good as you rev it out. And that's one of the joys of this bike, is revving this thing out completely and staying well within the speed limit. So let's talk about that just briefly, about what it's like to drive like that. So there are a number of smaller bikes in this class. The MT-03 from Yamaha is one, which I've driven. The R3, the most modern one, that's basically comparable. What I find about that R3 engine is that twin cylinder feels like it revs forever. This one, for a single cylinder, traditionally single cylinder bikes rev slower, but this one still feels like it revs very fast, and that comes down to gearing. The power band on this motor is not huge, right? It's a small engine, makes good power, about 44 horsepower, I believe, but it makes it in a sort of narrow rev range or narrow power band. So what they do is they gear it really well, and when you're riding this bike in the lower RPMs, which is a lot of time where a dual sport bike with a single cylinder will have some torque and then kind of fade out in the top end, this one's the exact opposite. It doesn't have a ton of power down in the low range, but when you drive it up to the higher ranges of the gears, it really revs quickly and it's a lot of fun. So it never scares you. It just hasn't got the engine that's powerful enough to really scare you, but it is absolutely thrilling revving it from about half RPMs right up to red line. So the lower half of the RPMs, you know, not a ton, but the upper half really is thrilling, and you can rev it right up to 5th and 6th gear, revving very well and keeping it below that 100 kilometers an hour, 62-ish miles an hour range, and really have this thing enjoyable. And that's one of the keys with the Duke, is revving it through the gears. Now, again, we're going to talk about it closer to the end about how this bike makes you better as a rider and how you can actually use it to become a better rider. But let's keep moving around again. One thing, actually, we'll just say right here, one thing I want to show you is just the overall compact size of this. One thing that's very weird for me is, like I said, it feels small, but not to the point where you're cramped. It's kind of like driving a Mini Cooper, right? It's a smaller car, but it still fits you fine. So that's kind of what you feel like in here. Now, any small displacement bike that is a small frame as well, right away gives you a feeling you cannot get with bigger engine bikes that are bigger overall. So there's definitely that flickability, the ability to go left and right very quickly. But this one's a little bit unique in the Duke setting, because the RC390 is very race bike feel. It's very different seating position. Your butt is higher, your bars are lower, it places you more in a race situation. It's not like something like the Yamaha R3 or the Ninja 500, which are still more closer to this seating position. But even compared to for instance, the Ninja 500 feels much more like a sport tourer than something like this. And I should say the Z500 would be the direct competitor, but you feel upright on this. There's no place to move. There's like, you can't move back any. There's no place to move forward any. Your legs are kind of locked in here. You're in that sport riding position, but the firm seat is wide enough to be comfortable, and the seating position here is very comfortable for around town. I like it as an around town bike better than the RC390 because you've got a little bit better visibility. When you're leaned over to see beside you is a little harder than when you're sitting upright. But interesting, sitting upright, I can see the front wheel. You often can't do that with bikes with fairings or bikes with other stuff, or even just bigger naked bikes. So you really have the sense of being right into a tight package, not so small like the Honda Grom or something like that category of those mini motos, but it's probably the smallest full-size bike you can get on, and that right away offers you a different perspective in braking and cornering and feeling and that kind of thing. One of the things I will point out about the suspension here, it is manually adjustable, which means you can turn these knobs here without tools. We're going to talk about how that works again close to the end of this video on making this thing, teaching you to be a better rider, but we should just show you the dash really quickly. A couple little things in here that make it pretty cool. So this isn't meant to be a full dash review. I am filming in probably the brightest sunshine I can film, but you can still see, you can see the dash. Now I will say filming a LCD screen, or a TFT screen, excuse me, will you know, always show up less clear on camera than it does in anything else. We're just going to skip out of these warning lights there. So a couple things I just want to show you. You have a launch control mode even on this 390. That is something cool. So you can just drop the clutch from a high rev and it'll work with you with a launch control when you have that set up. You have road ABS, and just you can turn on or off, so you can turn off the rear ABS. You have a motorcycle traction control, which is adjustable. This is in the ride mode section. That is the what do you call it, track mode here. So we're going to go into here, we're going to go into the ride modes here. You can see it's in track mode. You also have a rain mode and a street mode. That is also fairly uncommon for a bike of this category. So I'm gonna kill the street. Let's turn on the bike there. We'll leave it in the street mode there, and then we'll back our way out of these things. So some of these menus can be accessed while you're driving, which is kind of cool, but again, you have to be super careful with that because it is the kind of thing that can be a little bit distracting. But that gives you some things. I want to talk about that launch control and everything else as well, so let's do that. So yesterday we had a 292cc single cylinder Yamaha X-Max scooter. This is a 399, so this is a bigger engine, and we talked about how traction control wasn't really needed on that scooter. It's heavier, it's less powerful, and being an automatic transmission, the power comes on very smooth. This being a little bit more powerful than that and significantly lighter, traction control does play an advantage, especially in things like rain. You've got that rain mode. But let's talk about that launch control now. Launch control is really about what this bike is all about. On a high power bike, you need to use launch control or a traction control if you just dump the throttle and go, because otherwise a high power bike will just cartwheel itself right over, front wheel off the ground. But a launch control on this bike is great for beginners, because what it does is it allows you to figure out what a true really fast start for this bike can look like. And then as you learn, you can turn that launch control off and replicate it on your own. You're not going to quickly cartwheel the bike without the launch control, but it does give you an idea of what the bike is capable of. And that's one of the strong benefits of this bike. Everything about it is going to teach you what you're capable of. You've got better tires than most other sport bikes out there, so you can head into corners, dive deeper into corners. Once you gain some confidence, you don't have to do that from day one, but as you gain confidence, you can trust the tires to go deeper and deeper into corners. And I can tell you right now, I can drive this bike faster than many big bikes, especially through a high corner course, braking a little bit later, getting on the throttle a little bit earlier because you're not going to upset the rear end. And you can also practice exactly, and you feel in a small bike like this, exactly where you need to come on and off the power. So let's say you head into a typical traffic circle, which are in more and more communities now. You can come off the throttle, come on the throttle, and you can see, am I in the power, am I out of the power? You notice it on a bike with a little bit less power, whereas a bigger bike, you might lose a half a second or a full second by not being in the power, but you'll make up for it in your feeling by just having the engine take over. This thing teaches you skill, clutch control, throttle control, gear, everything that you need to be in by keeping the bike in the power. It's all about momentum on this bike. But those tires are also going to help. Now, the other thing that's going to help a beginner is these adjustments on the suspension. We didn't show them to you in this video, but they're able to be adjusted by hand. What that does is allow you to take the same section of road again. You can soften it up and go, okay, did I feel like it gave me more grip? You can firm it up. Did I feel like it gave me more grip? And you can start to figure out what goes on. You also have that little rubber band here, which is going to tell you how much the forks dove under braking, how much they bounced around in various corners. You can put that where you need to put it and get a real sense of what the suspension is doing by firming it up or softening it out based on the road you're doing. It's a thing that can teach you about how to dial in your suspension. You don't have to know a lot about it. You can watch a couple YouTube videos, but you can start to feel the difference on a bike like this and make the adjustments by hand, so when you move up to a bigger bike that requires tools to adjust that suspension, you're already going to know what you're doing. Everything about this bike is about teaching you to have a better understanding of riding, and that's what I think makes this bike great. So let's talk about who this bike is for. Well, let's deal with the competitors first of all. Compared to a Yamaha R3, again, I say R3, MT03, you can decide what you want. I think this has got a little bit better suspension. It's definitely got a unique character to that single cylinder engine, which again, is a preference type thing. You have to decide which brand you like, all kinds of things like that. It's hard for me to tell you exactly what's better. Compared to something like a Ninja 500, this one feels more, not frenetic, but more angry, more growly, more like I'm willing to just go out and get it. Whereas the Ninja has moved from a 250 to a 300 to a 400 to now a 451, which is the 500. That Ninja 500 is a fairly refined bike for the class, especially in that engine. It does make a little more power, but it feels a little bit more like a sport tourer. Now, on a twisty road, it's going to feel very similar, but this one has better tires, has the option of adjustable suspension. So again, I think you're getting that there. This bike is not the most practical small bike out there. You know, I have the Royal Enfield Himalayan. It's got the bags on the back. You can take it camping. You can take it, you know, stuff and do running around town, that kind of thing. I don't really feel like this is made to do that. Throw a backpack on, that's your luggage for this. But the compactness of this bike really gives you a feeling that you can't get anywhere else. So when we talk about who this bike is for, there's lots of small displacement competitors. But even within KTM's own lineup, the adventure bike is going to give you the ability to go camping on it, do all those kinds of things, but it's really going to be geared for an off-road oriented rider who uses the roads to get to the off-road. That's really where I would use that. The other RC390 is a track-oriented bike. You can absolutely use it on the road, but you're going to be in that track position. What this one does to me is it gives you a fairly comfortable position, although you are locked into a firm position. It gives you a comfortable position to really, really execute on being a good motorcyclist. Now, if your idea of fun on a motorcycle is twisting the throttle and using that as for speed, and don't get me wrong, that's fun, then this one may not be the best one for you. But if you want strong pull on the acceleration, this one still has that, and you can really fine-tune your riding skills. So whether you're an experienced rider or a new rider, that's where I think the Duke 390 really comes in. It's got enough adjustment that you can play with it like you're on a super bike. It's got enough features and stuff in the dash that you can tweak it here and there. You can drive it hard and not be at risk of getting tickets for the most part, but you can still go well beyond speed limit. You can drive it down the highway, you can do all that kind of stuff. But the compactness, the lightness, the visibility, again, the camera that you're seeing when you're driving with me is on my chest. It's not on my helmet. I try to give you a little bit more view of the dash in my riding reviews and a little bit more view of what I see, but you'll see that it's a very good open view even from my chest. You feel like there's just nothing beneath you. You feel that magic of motorcycling, and despite the fact that it has all the features in the dash, it's still one of the most true motorcycles to ride in the sense that you really feel connected with machine, and that to me is what makes this thing unique. So who is it for? Someone who wants something that's very enjoyable, that has that, you know, rowdy kind of acceleration for a smaller bike, that's going to keep you within speed limits, but it also, no matter what level of rider you are, it's going to teach you to be a better rider if you're willing to learn from it. And that to me is what makes this bike great. So there's my review of the Duke 390. This is a 2024 used model. You can get, of course, new models or used models, this one included, at McLean Sports. The link is in the description there. If you made it to the end, I really appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.